Last week I showed you VOLUTA, and that one question I got a lot of times was why a spiral? Not why a circle, not why a square, like why this specific shape? Today I want to actually answer that because the honest answer is I almost didn't design a spiral at all. So I would say let me show you my first sketch. VOLUTA started as a brief in my spatial visualization class in my university. The assignment was open. We had to design a floating habitat for 2 people with sustainable systems. No constraints on location or shape. And that sounds like a dream brief, but actually it's not, because you can design anything and usually you end up designing the most obvious thing. So my first instinct was a rectangle. A small box on water, clean, efficient and easy to model. And honestly, it was so boring. So this is the sketch I almost submitted. As you can see, it's just 2 floors, a rectangle on water. You have windows, you have solar panels on top, which technically work like this because it collects water, it does everything the brief asks for. But then I realized there's one problem, because when I imagined living in it, all I saw was like a small apartment with like really nice views. But I realized when I'm designing a floating home for 2 people, it's not really important if it floats. The important thing is how you feel living in it. So a rectangle on water feels like a rectangle. So that's exactly when I started looking for things without corners. So I started looking at shells, specifically the nautilus. It's an animal that lives inside a structure it grew itself. So every chamber is exactly the size it needed to be at that point in its life. So there's no wasted space and the form is the whole function. So then I drew this in about 30 seconds. And immediately something clicked. Because the spiral solves something a rectangle can't. It lets the space get bigger and smaller as you move through it. At the outer edge, wide open and social, and at the center, it's tight, intimate and quiet. That meant that the spiral itself could create different zones just through how wide it was at any given point. So in that moment, I knew I wasn't going to go back to the rectangle again. So there's a math sequence called Fibonacci that shows up in nautilus shells, in galaxies, in pine cones, basically everywhere nature has to grow efficiently. And the rule is simple. Each number is the sum of the number before it. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. And if you draw squares in those sizes and connect their corners with a curve, then you get this. A spiral where every section is about 1.6 times bigger than the last one. Now here is why that matters for home. When I applied this to VOLUTA, I got a floor plan where the bathroom, the smallest, most private room, sits at the tightest point of the spiral. The bedroom slightly more public. The kitchen also a bit more public and sits on the step out. The living area, even more public, sits at the widest curve. So each room is automatically proportional to how often you use it and how much space it needs. I didn't have to decide any of that because the whole geometry decided. And yeah, that's a very old idea, but applied to a floating habitat, at least one I could find, it was a new idea. So once I committed to the spiral, 3 things solved themselves. 1, there are no corridors. You don't walk from room to room through hallways, you walk along a spiral. The journey is the space. Number 2, the center became a natural light cord. Every floor plan needs a way to get daylight deep into the structure, and with a spiral the center is automatically open to the sky. And number 3, the roof became one continuous curved surface, which means that rainwater is getting collected naturally toward the center, and also the solar panels can follow the curve instead of like sitting on a flat plane. I didn't design any of these features. Like they came out of the geometry I chose, and that's what I mean when I say constraints can be more creative than freedom. There's one decision in this floor plan I would change today: the living room. On the paper it looked fine. It sits on the curved wall of the spiral. And it has like built-in seating, it has the planted wall, the direct connection to the light cord. But what I'm noticing now is that it's actually the least comfortable room in the whole home. There's just not enough space to really settle into it. There's almost no privacy because it opens directly into the light cord, and also when two people are living there, like one cannot read peacefully in the living room while the other one is in the kitchen, because it's technically the same room. I prioritized openness and flow, but the cost was a living room which doesn't feel like a place you want to spend your evening in. So yeah, I would say that's the kind of mistake you realize after finishing your project, and that's exactly why I'm gonna redesign Voluta at the end of the series, but yeah, that's a video for later. So next week, video 3, it's gonna be very different from my first 2 videos. No renders, no architecture, just me talking about how a second semester in a design school is like, what I'm learning, what I'm scared of, and also why I started this channel. So it's gonna be my most honest video this month, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, then subscribe. And if you have any questions about the floor plan, Voluta, you can leave it in the comments below, and I will pick the best ones for my next videos. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I see you next Wednesday.